Right, the next thing we've got here as we move along, as you can see, I'm gluing lots and lots of bits on. I don't need to show you everything, but we've got this piece just here, right? If I show you just along here, we place this on here like so, and then we need to glue on here this. It's like a sensor of some sort, right? And that needs to just glue down right on top of there. And the whole idea is that when we move the gun, this back piece can nicely slide with it and stays basically attached to it. So what we want to do here is we want to glue this really carefully, right? Really carefully, so we don't actually glue this piece actually in place. We want to keep it nice and steady. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a little bit of glue where we want it, but not where we don't want it. Right, then we're going to place our little sensor on here like so, and that should start to bite pretty quickly. But then what I'm going to do is just at the front, right, this is okay to glue this down onto our gun here. Right, now we may have got some glue because it's, you know, these quick cements got great capillary action. They're potentially going to flow into places we don't want them in this case, right? So what I like to do is, while that's drying, just keep moving it for a bit. I mean, actually you might sort of see it is sort of lifting a bit, so we want to just make sure that it's still moving. So while this quick cement is drying, just make sure that this is still moving. Right, you might have to play around with it a bit, maybe come back to it after 5 minutes, keep moving it, making sure that it is not gonna, you know, stick into a position and end up being something like, as we sort of move the turret forward, it's lifting up because it's glued into place. We want it to be nice and smooth. It's also something that we're going to have to take note of. We're going to have to make sure that when we're doing all our spraying, all our weathering, that we're constantly moving this gun so as we get everything sprayed and everything. And when we do our weathering, we could probably do something cool where we sort of completely bring it down, maybe do a bit of weathering there to show it sort of moving and leaving scratches and that kind of stuff. But yeah, just keep on moving it and hopefully that should be good. So with our hatch nicely all done now and in position, right, we're going to move along with the miniatures actually, because there's a bit of flash on these and I want to sort of go over them with you. Here's the sprue. We're not going to be using all of them. I just want one, you know, commander or something coming out of here, or it would be the loader. I think it's the loader, or no, it's probably the gunner actually. But what we've got here is, if we bring you in, as you can hopefully see, we do have, you know, a bit of a seam line going around here. We do need to sort this out. Now luckily with figures, this is fabric, so you know, we don't have to get it all sort of perfect. We can actually kind of make it look like fabric. So I like personally to get out a blade. We've got a little seam line here and we can just start scraping away at the seam line, right, to get that to disappear. Now you do want to do this with things like infantry and cloth and everything, because we're probably going to put a wash on top of this, and any sort of seam lines or anything like that, and a wash is going to go into them and bring them out. So we do want to make sure that they are gone. But hopefully, as you can see there, just that little bit of a sort of a 90-degree angle bit of scraping with a blade has nicely removed that quite nicely. We do have a bit of the sprue attached here. This is going to be a bit of a nasty sort of removal of any sort of detail. Luckily, you know, there is going to be an arm that's going to go underneath there, and as you can see, it's going to cover it up, so we don't have to, you know, spend too much time in it. They have put it in a nice location that really we're not going to see. But hopefully, as you can see, I'm just slowly slicing away at it. I'm not coming in and going right up to the piece and really sort of trying to slice that in one go. I'm just slicing it a little bit at a time, and it just makes it much more neater and easier than trying to really dig in there and rip it out in one go. Right, for something like this, I mean, you know, we've got a fairly big sort of bit of the sprue left over there. So I'm probably going to come in, we've got these skinny sticks, right, nice and spongy to go with the curvature. I'll probably just give this a little bit of a quick sand just to smooth it over. Right, again, we haven't got to worry too much because the arm's going to be in the way there. But a nice bit of a sand just to get rid of most of that. Maybe scrape this up a little bit here. But in situations like this, I mean, really to be well and truly, you know, knowing what's going on and how it's going to look, do you know what? You just need to get a primer down on that. Actually get some paint going down so you can actually see your seam lines and see if you've got them all, and if you need to take care of them, and then maybe then reapply a bit of a primer. Right, but I'm going to do that all the way around, and really this kind of method as well does go for any of the pieces I've been doing on here. Whenever you cut anything off the sprue, you've got a bit of a seam line. I like to just scrape it with the blade just to remove it, and it just stops any sort of washes or anything like that sort of picking up these seam lines and bits of flash and showing them off too much, and just going through all of them like that. Just a quick one here now with I do believe it's the gunner in position. What you want to do is, what I like to do is I like to sort of glue the arms on and very quickly sort of position, right? Because if you need to move the arms at all so it kind of sits right and sits in the position you want it, while the quick cement is still actually drying, you can quickly sort of move it, just adjust it a little bit here and there to maybe suit how you want this. Now nicely, this one does actually fit sort of really nicely in position. The arms are nicely in position, the way I would want it. Also test any of this. I mean, we've got our MG just here which fits on there. Make sure that, you know, that fits in, and the crew member isn't going to sort of get in the way. Just checking all these things. Now it does, as you can sort of see, sort of kind of lean a bit. See, I'm sort of pushing that back down. We may have to, I mean, I don't want to glue this in, right, because we want to be able to have this crew member nice and loose so we can paint him, because he's going to be totally different to our tank. We want to be able to paint him separately. So maybe somewhere in here I'm going to put like maybe a bit of plasticard, hopefully, as you can see here, and maybe something that sort of lets him sit on there a little bit better so he actually sits nicer, or maybe once it's all done we actually glue him in place or something like that, but we'll work on that. But there are a few things on here. I mean, we've got quite a bit of a gap just here on his left arm. We want to sort of sort that out, so we'll look into that. So one good product for sorting out your little gaps, I show it all the time because it's absolutely fantastic, and that is the Vallejo putty technique. I like this actual filler because, you know, we've got this beautiful nozzle on here and it exactly gets it where we want, as well as we can actually apply this and sort of, you know, remove it while it's still wet. So for instance, as we just looked here with our little crew member, what we can actually do is get in our plastic putty, we can actually inject this exactly where we want it, just like so. Quickly getting out a cotton wool bud. Don't let this dry, maybe a little bit moist, and then what we go off and do is just wipe it up, right, and just keep sort of wiping it up until basically what you end up with is everywhere around it is nice and clean. Because it's wet, we can nicely remove it, but as you can see, we couldn't quite get to what's in the gap, so it is nicely filled in our gap. Now with this stuff, you may have to come back and put a second application on it, because as it does dry, it can sort of, I've noticed bubbles start appearing, so you might have to add a second lot to that. But there's also other areas on the model as well. I didn't quite like, I don't know how well you can see, it doesn't quite look as nice as I'd like it just here. So again, we can come in with the Vallejo putty technique, run it exactly along there, and we can just mop this up with a cotton wool bud. Alright, as we can see just here, nicely mopping it up, cleans it up really sort of nice gets everything nice around the edges, but we end up getting the Vallejo putty in any sort of gaps, which hopefully you can see now. See those little white bits? That's where the Vallejo putty has gone into a little gap that was left there, and that should be a lot nicer and a lot neater. And as you can see, this technique is really good because it's cleaned up while it's still wet. A lot of the other types of fillers and everything will fill it, let it dry, sand it, probably have to rescribe, read this, read that. I love this because it does, you know, you do the whole tidying up stage while it's still wet, so you don't have to do all that work, and it just makes everything look good. Very good for like little gaps that are there or something like that, especially on miniatures, because you don't have to get the seam lines absolutely perfect and seamless and all smooth and everything, you know, because it's cloth. It's like, you know, a bit of this just fills a gap really nice. So that's the Vallejo plastic putty technique.